So I was just, wow, blown away by the amount of information we had there. We'll dive a little bit into that, but and I always have notes because I always forget things. There's also another nice prayer I want to start with to Govardhan. Govardhan Giri Jubhyam Gopalam Sarvarakshaka Namaste Devarupaya Devanam Shukadayine. I offer my respectful obeisances unto Giri Govardhan, who is the protector of the Brajabasis. He is the Lord himself and gives pleasure to all the demigods. Protector of the Brajabasis. Sarva Rakshaka Gopanam. Protector of all those who take care of the cows. So this is a very nice remembrance of Giriraja. And of course there's endless prayers by all the acharyas that we could speak about glorifying Giriraja. And Rupa Goswami, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Raghunath Das Goswami, they're the most well known for these. And those you can look up later in the day and become a little bit more familiar with them. But I thought today, after talking with Shama Mandali, we would go on Govardhan Parkman. How many actually have been on Govardhan Parkman? About half. Yeah. How many have it in your plan as soon as all this clears up and we get to go? Indaduma Swami and I often talk back and forth, and he's always encouraging me about Govardhan Katha, and I'm always encouraging him, and so we kind of share information back and forth. And this last Kartik he gave me the opportunity to kind of kick off the Parakram with all the devotees, kind of try and set them in the mood. So I was thinking, there's over 1,008 different holy places on Govardhan. So, I mean, we could sit here till Kartik officially finishes on Sunday and still not cover all of them. But there are some prominent places that we can go around and stop at and try and fix our meditation in that way. Most of the places that I have shilas from, I didn't bring all of them. I have 32 Govardhan shilas, so taking them all someplace is quite an endeavor. So I just brought some that we'll mention and talk about later. But kind of following in some of the points that Maharaj made on this one class that I was mentioning, it's nice to think about the transcendental, aside from the fact that Govardhan Leela is completely transcendental in itself. It's nice to think about the transcendental nature of Govardhan in so far as what's underneath Govardhan Hill. I mean, we've all seen numerous paintings, and just unlimited paintings since we've been devotees. Krishna's got the hill up, it's all kind of, roots and things hanging there, and they're all kind of standing just in this bare patch of whatever, and everybody's standing there just like, okay, is it 7 days yet? We're kind of bored. How soon do we get out of here? But according to Kavi Karnapur and according to Jiva Goswami, that's not at all what's going on under there. When Krishna first decided to lift Govardhan Hill, he had a quick little council with the cowherd boys. Here's what we're going to do. I see what's going on, and so I'm going to lift the hill and everybody can come underneath. And the cowherd boys are like, yeah, right. Like buddies do. Yeah, right. Yeah, you're going to do that. Okay, great. Call me when you're through. So he said, no, really. Mother Mongol was, because he's the Brahmin, by the potency of my mantras are good. So on and on like this. The boys are talking. So in the meantime, Krishna enters into a cave at the Puchari. Most of the caves on Govardhan, which we'll talk about a little later, are down at the Puchari Inn. So he enters into a cave, goes right underneath, and he lifts the hill up from the middle. Now, it mentions that once the hill was lifted up, you've got torrential rain coming down on the hill, falling off the side. So the logical mind would think, oh, there's so much mud and debris and like that. But in reality, it was as if there were an invisible force field, and the rain just didn't come in. And Actually, it describes the rain falling off of Govardhan Hill looked like strands of pearls strung around the side of a parasol that was being held by Krishna. The entrance into Govardhan, because of course when you lift it up, it's quite an indention, indent, and there were steps made out of costly jewels and crystal and pillars, all kinds of colored stones, precious stones. And the cowherd men and women, when they looked underneath Govardhan Hill, they saw everything they would need for comfortable living. There were palaces with all kinds of household furniture. There were godowns for all kinds of grains and facilities they would need for surviving during that time. There was part of Govardhan Hill that was all fresh green grasses like we see here that the cows could easily enjoy. So they go on and describe this in great detail, and that, how Krishna held the hill up, so effortlessly for those 7 days. Of course, we know the one circumstance when he kind of caught that Radharani was looking at it from one of the sidelong glances, and he kind of got a little ecstasy, and the hill shook a little, and the cowherd boys all freaked out. It actually mentions that Mother Jasoda at one point, Giriraja likes to get a little bad. Oh, I see, that's the, no problem. He's always water. You can put him back in there, it's fine. Yeah. Oh, maybe. So, so at one point, Mother Jasoda actually became a little angry at Krishna. You don't listen to anybody. You're just doing what you're going to cause some trouble. This hill's not that. She would actually be very upset. On the Mara, down. So all of these things, if you go to this class I was mentioning by Indian Swami, he goes into this with great detail. Just this little one segment of the pastime, he speaks about it for over an hour. It's really quite amazing. But so this is what we find underneath Govardhan. It's not a muddy pile of rainwater that everybody's kind of holding their pants legs and saris up, sloshing through, trying to avoid, but it's all just amazingly full of all kinds of jewels and seats and all kinds of just every facility for comfortable living. There was no inconvenience to the cowherd men and women, cows, cowherd boys and girls at all. So it mentions that Krishna was standing right in the middle of this, and he looked like a beautiful blue ornament, and he was holding up Govardhan Hill, and actually he told Mother Jasoda, he said, it's not that I'm holding Govardhan Hill. You think I'm just, but Govardhan Hill's a great mystic yogi. By his own desire can become light as a feather. He's just floating there. I'm just pretending to hold it. So even Krishna joined in a little bit in that side of the fun. But I'd like to start our parikram, and you can dive into this little trip. Will take however you want, meditatively, closing your eyes, or just, taking it in, whatever works for you. But there are different places to start Govardhan Parikram fun. A lot of times when there's a large group, everybody starts from Kusham Sarovar because it's extremely convenient. Coming in buses, several buses, they're not allowed to go into Radhakund town, and they're not allowed to go into Manasiganga, so Kusham Sarovar is very convenient. Rupa Goswami recommends starting from Manasiganga, the Haridev temple. This is where Mahaprabhu started. Many pilgrims start and finish at the Radhakund area. In Radhakund, there is one very nice temple of Lord Shiva. It's called Kundeshwar Mahadev. Lord Shiva manifests himself in different places in the Dham, both Vrindavan and Navadvip, as the protector of those places, as the bestower of Krishna Bhakti to the devotees who do service in these places, as the remover of obstacles to complete one's service in these places. So many devotees go to Kundeshwar, offer obeisances, get blessings from the pujari there, and then circumambulate Radhakund Shamkund, either taking ceremonial bath or full bath, and then begin their parikrama. So we'll stop at Kundeshwar, get his blessings. We'll go around Radhakund Shamkund. About a third of the way around is the Radha Govinda temple. And just behind the Radha Govinda temple is the tongue of Govardhan. Beautiful little temple there. It's it's about the size of the little section right there, very small. Very quiet, peaceful place. Many pilgrims don't even know it's there. And it's a beautiful, quiet place to go and just sit and chant, circumambulate, tongue of Govardhan. Very interesting story. When Govardhan was officially established, the title owner when Radhakund was officially established, the title owner of the property, so to speak, was Raghunath Das Goswami. It was his. It was given to him. Raghunath Das Goswami was not one to involve himself in management and activities and things of this nature, so he had Jiva Goswami oversee a lot of this, and it's thanks to Jiva Goswami a lot of the developments came to be as a part of Radhakund Shamkund steps and nice bathing ghats and things like this. Raghunath Das Goswami was extremely reverential of Radhakund. He held it in the highest respect. This is one of the foolish natures of Prabhupada's early disciples. Going to Radhakund, and it was just like another swimming hole. Dive off the end, splashing around, loud and raucous. And, it was, when Prabhupada came to know, he stopped. That's why you see that instruction. Prabhupada said, no, you cannot bathe, you just take the water, because 20-year-old nonsense is just off the street. They didn't know anything. So in due course of time, the proper understanding of how to respectfully serve Radhakund Shamkund, how to respectfully take bath, came to be known, and devotees changed their habits considerably. So Raghunath Das Goswami was in this mode. He did not want to use the water from Radhakund Shamkund for bodily functions of various sorts, brushing teeth, bathing, taking care of nature's call, things of this nature. So he arranged for the servants to dig a well. And they began digging this well. And very shortly after breaking ground, blood came out of the ground. And you can just imagine if you're digging a hole and blood starts to come up. Okay, this is like, all right, let's put a stop to this right away. So the servants, and I was told somewhere, I was trying, in thinking about this preparation, I was trying to remember where I heard it, but I was told that they were Muslim servants that were digging, and for them it was even more of a superstitious thing. So at any rate, they stopped and they informed Raghunath Das Goswami, and Das Goswami said, all right, stop here. And then that evening when he was taking rest, which he did very little of, Giriraja appeared to him in a dream and said to him, this is my tongue they've struck, that's why it's bleeding. So excavate it, install it in a temple, and then you can again continue with the well. So this is what Das Goswami arranged, that the tongue would be extracted, and it's in this temple very nicely. Maybe about 3-4 times the size of this Govardhan Shila here. Very, very nicely situated in this temple, taken care of very wonderfully. I always tell this story in connection with this particular place. We lived in New York City for much of our life, especially when my son Namananda was little. And before going to Gurukula, he'd heard this story from me many times. So I think it was his first year or second year of Gurukula, something like that. They asked him to draw some pastime of Govardhan Leela. So he drew the servants of Raghunath Das Goswami drilling for the tongue of Govardhan, drilling the well and finding the tongue of Govardhan. There was red crayons, so the blood comes spurting out. It was almost like a horror film, spurting really high, that kind of thing. But the most interesting thing was, because Namananda is a New York boy, and all he's ever known for drilling is the jackhammers, the guys in the street stuff. So in this drawing, this crayon drawing he's got, There's the two servants of Raghunath Das Goswami with their dhotis and chutters, and they're holding jackhammers. I always cherish that drawing. I've actually got it laminated and hung in my office. At any rate, so we start there at Radhakund, and then after we come around Radhakund, we leave the town of Radhakund, and after a short walk, not very far, we come to Kusum Sarovar. Kusum Sarovar is probably one of the most photographed places in all of Govardhan. I mean, everybody knows it. Oh yeah, that's Kusum Sarovar. You ever been there? No, but I've seen a billion pictures of it. And it's a very, very wonderful place. Actually, in the, I think it was the 30s, 1930s, 1940s, a British surveyor was looking over all the lands of Vrindavan, surveying it, and they tried to find the bottom of Kusum Sarovar. They sent divers down, and they weren't able to reach the bottom of it. So how deep it is, nobody knows. Some people say it actually goes all the way to other planetary systems, whatever. So it was actually built in 1764 by the king of Bharatpur. Yeah, king of Bharatpur. And he built it as a palace to honor the places of worship, that pastimes that took place there with Radha and Krishna. And he arranged all these different domes you see there, and different places where devotees could bathe or sit and do their bhajan or have katha like that. It's a very, very wonderful place. Now, there was a great sage named Ashtavaka Muni who has a samadhi there. This dates back, the origins of this place go that far back. And so he actually appeared on the earth for this specific purpose of witnessing the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. So he sat there in meditation until Krishna appeared. And then once those pastimes were completed, he left his body and they fixed a samadhi there for him. There's several places. If you go just off to the sides of Kusum Sarovar, there's several samadhis and ashrams and things like that. But during the time of Radha and Krishna, there were elaborate, just huge flower gardens there. And there's one very, very nice pastime. Radharani and the gopis had gone to these flower gardens to pick flowers for the worship of Suryadev. So as was commonly the case, Krishna made it his business to show up there. So he challenged Radharani, said, hey, who are you that are picking the flowers here? Who's giving you permission to do this? So Radharani said, it is me. Don't you know who I am? And Krishna retorted back, he said, if I knew who you are, I wouldn't be asking. So Radharani said, well, I don't care if you know me or not. We're picking flowers here, so who are you that you can bother us? Krishna very proudly put his hands on his hip. He said, I am the gardener here. This garden is owned by Maharaj Kandarpa, Cupid, and he has given me charge over all the flowers in the forest in this area, placed full powers in me. So because you've come without permission, I'm going to confiscate all of your flowers. Radharani said, I know you. You're just a thief. You've captured the Maharaj's property, and now you're trying to capture the hearts of all the young girls here. Krishna said, no, you are the thief. I will prove it. Every limb of your body has stolen something. Your hands and the soles of your feet, they've stolen the beauty of the lotus flower. Your gait has stolen the beauty of the elephants and the swans. Your nails have stolen the beauty of mirrors. Your knees have stolen the beauty of golden balls. Your hips have stolen the beauty of banana trees. Your navel has stolen the beauty of a lake of nectar. Your teeth have stolen the beauty of a pearl necklace. Your eyes have stolen the beauty of a deer's eyes. The folds in your stomach, it's not a bad thing to have folds in your stomach for ladies. I don't know about guys, but the folds of your stomach have stolen the beauty of the waves of the Jamuna. In this way, you've stolen all of these things. Radharani, after listening, she said, yeah, you're very clever. You were a great thief, yet you're acting like a saint and calling us a thief. You had to steal the clothes of we gopis Because even though you're a prince, no one would give their daughter to you. You haven't planted a single tree in this forest, and yet you're calling it yours. Vrenda Devi has overseen planting of all these trees and flowering bushes, and she has given them as a gift to me. Did you not see the sign at the entrance that says ladies only? You're not a lady. So we're picking the flowers for the worship of Surya Dev. How dare you enter here? If you don't leave right now, I'm going to call Lalita, and she will give you what's for. So with this, immediately Vishaka came in and ushered all the girls away, and Lalita started forward, and Krishna disappeared. Krishna doesn't like to mix with Lalita. Lalita, as you may know, one of her qualities, she's a little fiery, and she has no qualms about giving it back at Krishna. So this is one of the pastimes that takes place there at the Kusum Sarovara, in the gardens there. When we leave Kusum Sarovara, we come back out to the path and we go down just a short distance. Not very far of a walk, we come to a place called Sham Kutira. Sham Kutira means the dark forest. It's described as the dark forest for two reasons. Basically because the trees were so dense in Sham Kutira at one time that there was no sunlight on the ground. It was very dark there. And also because the prominent trees there are the tamal trees, which are darkish in complexion, just like Krishna. So this is also the place where Govardhan first comes out of the ground in our times. Of course, we all know Govardhan was at one point so high that when Surya Dev would circumambulate the universe, taking the sun globe around, the horses on his chariot would stop on the peaks of Govardhan to munch a little grass. Now, of course, you have to go all the way to Sham Kutir before you see the Govardhan is coming out of the ground. And so this is also the place where Sankachyuta had his exchange with Krishna and Balaram. Sankachyuta was such a rascal. He thought, oh, this Krishna and Balaram, they're just a couple of cowherd boys. I'm stealing all these gopis of theirs. So he made some effort to come in and do like this. Balaram and Krishna both picked up big logs, it mentions, like a big tree branch, maybe a whole tree. And they challenged him. And Sankachyuta realized, oh, I might have overestimated my position here. So he took off deeper into the Shamkutira forest. Krishna said to Balaram, he said, Balaram, you will look after all the gopis, to which Balaram was quite happy to do. And Krishna himself took off after Sankachyuta. He caught up with Sankachyuta, and just before finishing him, he stole, Sankachyuta was known as that name because he had this beautiful jeweled conch shell in his turban. And so Krishna took that conch shell jewel from him and finished him. And he returned to Balaram, and he did something that's very telling. You know, a lot of times the stories we have of pirates plundering or the Vikings plundering, whatever, they would keep all the spoils, you know. Well, Krishna, once he took this jewel from Sankachyuta, he then presented it to Balaram. I have a present for you. Look what I got from him here. You can have it. He didn't have any need for keeping it himself, nor any desire, so he gave it to him. Now, inside the forest of Shamkutira is another place called Ratnakund. Previously, when I was first going into Shamkutira back in the early 80s, this Ratnakund was very rough and unfinished. If you go there now, there's been quite a bit of work to make it a very nice kund, although the water in it's still not so pristine. But it's very nicely developed and built up with steps on all four sides and a little mandap right near there. During the time of Radha and Krishna, this mandap, this dais, had a jeweled throne that sat on it of the finest of all kinds of precious stones. And Radha and Krishna would sit on this throne together. And this place, Ratnakund, gets its name because at this point, this place, Krishna would take a jeweled comb and comb Srimati Radharani's hair. All the ladies like to have their long hair combed. It's very refreshing. My mother enjoyed this very much. My mother arranged, we would have a combing circle when I was growing up, with 5 kids. So we'd sit in a circle and everybody had a comb or a brush and comb and brush the one. My mother always made sure me, because I was the oldest, was right behind her so she'd get the best job. Anyway, so this pastime takes place there at Ratnakund of Krishna combing Radharani's hair. We come back out of Shamkutira. Just as we come back out the main path, the Government Forestry Service has fenced off large sections just near the Parikram mark and started a replanting program. And there's a very large program to make the forest actually very dense again. There's one spot in there about twice the size in width of this, and it's a place where a large number of various sized Govardhan Shilas have been collected. And it's said that this is there so that those that are not able physically or whatever to circumambulate the entire Govardhan Hill can go to this place and circumambulate Govardhan Hill. So we leave this place and go back out to the main marg and continue on for some way, keeping Govardhan Hill on our right and the street on our left. And in a short distance we come to the town of Manasi-Ganga. Actually, mostly just the holy place of Manasi-Ganga, which is on the edge of the town of Govardhan. Manasi-Ganga has unlimited pastime places with it. We know after Krishna killed Vatsasura, the cowherd boy suggested this before the whole Radha-Kund exchange with the gopis, but the cowherd boy suggested, you should purify yourself. You need to go to the Ganga and take a bath. And he's like, I'm not going to the Ganga, the Ganga's coming here. So by his meditation, he called the Ganshi. She came riding on the back of her carrier, a crocodile. They say that to this day in Manasi-Ganga there are still crocodiles. I've been to Manasi-Ganga many times and looked and looked and looked, and never seen one, but they say they're there. So Christian took his bath then, and then at that time also Manasi-Ganga was actually a river flowing on the base of Govardhan there. And one time the gopis were bringing their milk sweets, their butter and their yogurt. They were coming to market, and they had to cross the Manasi-Ganga River. Unfortunately, there was only one boat, and it was kind of a beat-up looking boat. And the boatman was a young boy, and he was asleep in the boat. So they weren't so enthusiastic, but it was the only boat. So they bartered with the boatman about a price, what percentage of their milk sweets and butter and yogurt and all he would get. So boatman got in the boat and he started to row out for a little bit, not very far out into the river. And he stopped and he leaned back and he said, there's so many of you, I'm very tired from even this little bit of rowing. You're going to have to pay me in advance so that I have the strength to make it the rest of the way across the river. So they kind of quickly huddled and he had to go, all right. So they gave him, and he ate milk sweets. And you can just imagine Sandeshwar school. And then he said, oh, that was so tasty. I have to take a little rest here before I can continue. Matter of fact, I think if each of you massage an arm and a leg, it'll give me the strength to be able to continue. Massaging like this. And so then, all right, so he gets back at it. And so then the process repeats itself. It gets a little further out. It's such hard work with so many of you. And Lalita, she says, well, I tell you what, we'll each grab an arm and a leg, and then we'll throw you overboard. We'll throw ourselves. No, all right. So he continues to row, and then he points out that there's a small hole in the bottom of the boat. The water's coming through. He says, you've got so much in this boat, which is not normally made for taking all of you, and then all of this butter and yogurt and sweets and all. We're going to have to throw stuff overboard or we're going to sink. And the gopis were very resistant to this idea initially. I mean, this is, their parents have sent them to market with everything, and, so, but he points out the water's coming up, and their saris are getting wet, so all right, so they start throwing milk products over the side. And he says to them, it's not enough. he says, you're going to have to take all your jewelry off and throw it overboard too. They start taking off their bangles and their rings and their earrings, and tiki nose rings, and throwing everything over. And he says, this isn't enough. You're going to have to take all your clothes off and throw them overboard. And at this point, Lolita says again, I think we'll just throw you overboard. You weigh more than all of our clothes do. All right. I'll continue rowing. So, by the divine arrangement of Purnamasi, at this point a storm comes in over the Manasiganga River, and the boat begins to rock a bit. And Krishna, in his expertise as a boatman, begins to cause it to rock even more. And in this way, the gopis become very frightened, particularly Srimati Radharani. And she unthinkingly throws herself around the neck of the boatman, clinging to him, thinking that this is the only way she won't fall overboard. And she feels something and realizes it's a fluke, and then realizes who the boatman is. And then at this point, the storm disappears and they continue across to the other side, all having nice conversation and sweet kirtans like that. So it ends up with a nice, pleasant ride. So this is one of the pastimes that takes place there at Manasiganga. Just across from Manasiganga is a place called Brahmakund. The cowherd boys also would regularly go to Manasiganga and have their lunch on the banks of Manasiganga. And then they didn't really want to wash their hands in Manasiganga, much more like Das Goswami had. So they would go across the path to Brahmakund, which was a little kund, and rinse their hands there. It wasn't called Brahmakund at the time. Now, we all know Lord Brahma's scenario, and, Krishna was not so happy with him after the prank he pulled. And so Brahma's always trying to figure out, how can I make up for this? So he realized, if I could just get the prasad from the hand of Krishna. So he decided that he would become a fish in this kund, Brahmakund, where the cowherd boys go and Krishna and wash their hands after they eat. So that's what he did. There's only one thing. Brahma's got 4 heads. So the fish had 4 heads. Now, Krishna leans over to rinse his hands in this kund, and there's this fish with 4 heads, and he pulls his hand back like, boys, well, I'm not putting my hands in there. Instead, he goes back over to Manasiganga and rinses there. So Brahma was thwarted again. When Krishna lifted Govardhan Hill, the rains, as Indra Swami mentions in his class, the actual, just way beyond anything we can imagine as far as devastating rains. The rains coming on Govardhan Hill were just, it was unbelievable. And so where was all this rainwater going to go? Well, Vasuki appeared, wrapped himself around the bottom of Govardhan Hill. And then Sudarshan came and dried up these rains as they, so to speak, puddled up in the coils of Vasuki. So after the pastime of Govardhan finished, and Govardhan had its place back in its place, Sudarshan Chakra wanted to stick around for, but there's no Sudarshan Chakra. So it was arranged that Sudarshan would reside at the banks of Manasiganga. And this is why it's Chakreshwar. Now, Lord Shiva appears in that particular place. There's a whole other story about how that happens. But he's known as Chakaleshwar Mahadev, the protector of Govardhan Hill. So there's a temple there for Chakaleshwar Mahadev. You can go when you go to Manasiganga and take his blessings to continue on the parikram like this. So these are some of the pastimes that take place there at Manasiganga. So when we leave Manasiganga, we come in the backside of Govardhan. Then you take that little shortcut and then make a right-hand turn on the main road. And as you approach Dangati, those that are knowledgeable know that just on the right-hand side is the best place in all of Govardhan to buy sun papri for your Giriraja. And matter of fact, it's a mandatory tradition after you do Govardhan Parkland to go there and have some lassi and some papri from this place. Anybody that's done this knows this place. It's very famous. And many devotees, like if somebody can't go to Govardhan, they know you're going, Prabhu, bring me back a couple of kg of some papri from there. So you see devotees sometimes returning with one entire suitcase of sun papri. You can only eat so much sun papri. At any rate, so we go to the up the hill, and there's Gangati, very famous pastime place. And if we continue down that area right there is a place where many pilgrims sit and do their begging. Some of them are actually pilgrims, some of them are just professional beggars, but somehow they've all taken shelter of Giriraja. When Madhava and myself and Vrindavan Kirtan were doing Govardhan Dandavat Parikram, we came to this place and we realized that we had forgotten to bring any rupees to buy water. So we always get some water on the way, you know, at this place or that place. So it was just at this place we were quite thirsty. So he looked at me and I looked at him. We said, yes. So we sat down there amongst all the pilgrims and put our cloth out, just, you know, chanting. And some Eastern European devotee came along and dropped some rupees in our laps, and it was just enough to buy a bottle of water. Got our water and continued. So anyway, you continue down that path, and it's a very joyful walk. And you go for some distance. You just Govardhan is fully manifest right there on the right, and a little ways down you come to the ISKCON Palace, as it's called, Bhaktivedanta Ashram. This was a palace formerly owned by the Maharaj of Chatpur, who became friendly with and associated with Tamal Krishna Goswami. And he donated this palace to Goswami on behalf of ISKCON. And Goswami immediately brought some men and they began to develop the place. They found that on the altar there was a very nice, I don't know, maybe 4 times this size, dark Govardhan Shiva. Excuse me. And they had a need to dig a freshwater well there because the large number of men staying there required additional water source. So they started digging a well, and in the process of digging that well, they uncovered an exact similar size Govardhan Shiva that was white. So those are installed there on the altar at the Bhaktivedanta Ashram, Krishna and Balaram Shivas you see there. Of course, we all know that the place is managed now under the direction of His Holiness Keshava Bharati Swami. And Keshava Bharati encourages everyone to go up to the rooftop and, as he says, see Govardhan Hill where the darshan never closes. And it's a very panoramic view up there. Although, last year when I was up there, I noticed that the trees are growing so tall now you almost can't see Govardhan. So they're going to have to build a couple more stories to keep that panoramic view. We continue down that way just a little further, and just on the right-hand side is a little break in the fence. And you can go in there, and this enters you into the Anakut Kshetra area. This is the area where this Anayor pastime happened, where all the different preparations were offered under the direction of Krishna to spite Indra and to encourage the cowherd men and women to worship Govardhan Hill. This is about a 2-kilometer section, and it's a wonderful sandy path. The sand is deep all the way up to your ankles, and in the very early morning when you're walking there, it's so refreshing. It's actually chilly, and when your feet are slipping in that sand up to the ankles in that cool morning chill of the sand, it's just so invigorating. And if you're fortunate enough to walk down that path before the sun comes up, you see the stars and the moon in the sky, and you hear just some very faint bhajans coming from this place and that place. It's just a very, very transforming experience. And there are some persons that have the seva of sweeping this area. And of course, I mean, we might say sweeping sand. What's the need? But this is the service they do for Giriraja. They have these very long brooms and they sweep away the footprints. If there's any debris that some careless pilgrim has left there. And after big festivals, there's a lot of careless pilgrims that have left debris. But they sweep all that to the side, and then the path is fresh again. You want to be sure that you walk the sandy path in the early morning. One time, Sesha Prabhu and I were doing our Govardhan Parikram quite late. It was high noon. The sand was very hot. You hear the story in Chaitanya Charitamrita of Sanatana Goswami walking on the beach in Puri to go and see Mahaprabhu, and the blisters that he got on his feet because the sand was so hot. This is how hot that sand in Anayor gets. So Sesha and I, there are various trees there, so we would stand under the shade of one tree. Right, you ready, Prabhu? Yeah, I'm ready, Prabhu. Okay, we can make it to that next shady spot, right? Okay, you ready? Go. And we would take off running, because the sand was literally that hot. And then you'd make it to the next shady spot. Okay, you have to wait for, so that's how we traversed our way through that whole first half of Shamkutir till it gets to the second half where there is quite a bit of shade. We had made the mistake of going there in the later part of the day, so when you do your Govardhan Parikram, be sure you're at Anayor in the early part of the day, otherwise you will live to regret it. Now, this is the area, another very famous photogenic part of Govardhan, where you can stand at about the halfway point, see the full panorama of Anayor. There's very few tall trees there, and this is the section, that entire distance, it was filled with all kinds of varieties of offerings from the Brijbasis. Piles and piles and piles of chapatis. Not, a stack of 100 like we sometimes see here at the kitchen in the Raman Reti, but hundreds upon hundreds of stacks of hundreds. Mm-hmm. And mounds and mounds of rice with huge pots of ghee next to them to pour over it. And all kinds of dals and savories and vegetables. And there were sweets too, of course. Unlimited types of milk sweets and sweet cakes floating in kheer and, oh boy. And all of this went the entire distance. And we know the story that Krishna manifested through Govardhan as a huge personality and ate everything. With his right hand, he was eating, and with his left hand, he was calling, Anayor, Anayor, more, more, more. So the residents, they were going back to wherever and preparing and bringing, and soon all of their entire stocks of food grains and vegetables and sweets, everything was depleted. And Giriraja is still eating more, more. So under the direction of Nanda Maharaj, they became a bit concerned. How are they going to satisfy? And they've neglected Indra. Now if they can't satisfy Giriraj, what will happen to them? Balaram stepped in at this point. He said, you take some fresh water from the kund there, put one tulsi leaf. He gave like that, and then in this way, Giriraj was totally satisfied. So this all takes place there in Anakut Kshetra, this entire section. If you go on down to the inn, it splits, and you can go out to the main road and go near Sankarshan Kund, which they've recently renovated in a very wonderful way. Or you can go the back way behind the little village of Anayor, and which is literally right at the base of Govardhan. If you go back this direction, you'll come across the Bhajan Kutir of Madhavendra Puri, where he discovered the Gopal deity. There's a little shrine they have there, and a small temple just next to that area. And very nice pujaris there. They're very happy to have visitors because they don't get very many. And you can stop there, do a little kirtan and katha. And then you continue on, and you come out just behind Govinda Kund. Govinda Kund is one of the sweetest places you'll find on all of Govardhan. Govinda Kund is the place where Indra came forth to get the forgiveness of Krishna. When he realized his mistake, and this is the whole, again on this lecture that Indraduna Swami gives, the third lecture on Govardhan, this is he goes into great detail as to Indra's mindset during the final pastimes of Govardhan Leela. So as he realizes his mistake, he approaches Lord Brahma. He says, I kind of blew it. What do you suggest I do? And Brahma laughs at him. You don't know my history? He said, one thing I can tell you. Put Sirabi Mata in front. Because Krishna's very kind to the cows. So Indra does like this. He approaches Krishna at Govinda Kund. Sirabi in the front, Airavata there, and then he comes. Sirabi, she offers the milk from her udders and bathes Krishna with that. Airavata has the celestial Ganga in his trunk, and he bathes Krishna with that. And then Indra begins to offer his prayers, requests forgiveness and all. As he concludes this, the different demigods come and they begin to worship him. Little Krishna, little boy Krishna there. They're offering incense and chamaras and peacock fans and big golden lamps with all kinds of ghee wicks and conch shells with water, everything, And then they finish and they crown him as the king of the cows, Govinda. And then they disappear. Now, unlike our modern standards of deity worship, they don't use the same paraphernalia twice. So they don't take all this with them. They just leave it there. Just at the tail end of their doing this, the cowherd boys arrive on the scene, led by Mano Mangal and Soka Krishna and Sudam and Subal and like that. And they see what's going on and they go, this is fun, let's try this. So they're picking up the chamaras and the lamps and they're worshiping Krishna too. As they're finishing up their playful worship, Nanda Maharaj and the older gopi men, they arrive, the gopas. And they see the boys doing this. They're like, wait a minute, what's going on here? So Madhu Mangal, he's the Brahmin, he appoints himself the spokesman. He steps forward and he explains to Nanda Maharaj, well, there was this man here with 4 heads, and then another guy with eyes all over his body, and they were offering everything to Krishna, so we just followed like them, and Nanda Maharaj became a little doubtful. I mean, the boys didn't have a tendency to tell stories, but, this is pretty big. At this point, a celestial voice spoke. As we have inaugurated Krishna as the Govinda, the protector of cows, the Brahmins, you should inaugurate him as the Prince of Braj. So Nanda Maharaj did like this, and at Govinda Kund, they inaugurated Krishna as the Prince of Braj. So in this way, Krishna got these 2 titles there at Govinda Kund. And then at this point, Nanda Maharaj arranged for worship to continue with Krishna, and they all continued on. Now, when we come down from Govinda Kund, we leave Govinda Kund, and there's a very nice path there. And in this section is, again, a place where the government has started the reforestation of Govardhan. And they actually have a government office there. It's a small building where they oversee all the planting and irrigation and all for the different trees and plants that they're putting in there. And if we continue just past that a little bit, is the place known as Saptakandar. And this is where the 7 prominent caves of Govardhan are. Now, I had heard about the caves of Govardhan for many years. When I was a young man, I was a member of a spelunking club. I don't know if any of you know what spelunking is. It's the proper name for a caver. So I was one of the older boys. Actually, I had a driver's license, so I would drive, and a lot of the younger kids and like that. And we had a couple of teachers from the school, and so we would regularly go caving. And this is a great fondness of mine, going into caves and, like this, and you're crawling your belly through the water and you come into big rooms, stuff like that and whatever. So I was always interested in these caves of Govardhan. I want to go in the caves of Govardhan and see, what's going on. So I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, I became friendly with one Bubba that lives out at Govardhan. And through an interpreter, I asked him, so these caves of Govardhan we hear about, where are they? I've never seen them. He said, oh yes, there are many caves. They're all on top of the hill. And I was immediately crestfallen, because I knew I'm never going to see these caves. We're followers of Mahaprabhu. We don't go on top of Govardhan Hill. So, at any rate, a couple of years ago, Madhavananda Prabhu and his magazine that he does, they arranged with a local to take a camera and go to the top of the hill and photograph these caves. And this was all published, and the caves are there. There's 7 caves up there. Of the 7, 6 of them are relatively small. You can see the entrances, you got to like crawl in to get to it. And it's said that they can hold 3, 4, maybe 5 people. But the 7th cave actually has a bricked entrance. They put a brick wall that they camouflaged to look like the rest of the hill. And you can see them going, and they say that 50 people can fit in this cave. Of course, nobody's been in there in recent years because there are serpents, poisonous snakes, cobras that live in there. And they're said to be great rishis that have taken that form to quietly live on Govardhan Hill and do their seva. There was one sadhu from Mumbai that came, decided to retire and live at Govardhan Hill in one of those caves, this particular cave. And the locals all told him, no, you can't live there. These rishis that live in there, they don't like visitors. You can't go there. No, Krishna will protect me. If he wants me to live, I'll live. If he doesn't want to, So he went and stayed in those caves, and the next day they found his body just outside the cave, completely covered in snake bites. Dead, of course. So this is local stories from the caves of Govardhan. We continue just past this place, and we have 2 options here. We can go to the left, and this goes down and takes us around a short little hill, short little path that goes to a hill where the Nishringa Mandir is. And this is a breaking point for many devotees that go in groups, because the pujaris there are very kindly disposed towards pilgrims coming and sitting on top of their garden. It's maybe 5 times the size of this area here, 4 times. And you can sit up there and do bhajans and katha and have the most beautiful view from the Saptakandara all the way down to Punchari, all the way over to Apsarakund. That whole area, it's the most, and in the early morning, before the sun has fully risen, to see that, and there's a little fog and mist, and it's just amazing. So this is a favorite place there. And that temple is the Nishringa temple because they have a Nishringa deity that's over 1,000 years old. And about this big or so. Like this, yeah. And if you give a nice donation, the pujari will lift up the dress and show you Hiranyakasipu laid across the lap of the deity, being ripped apart. So, very nice place there. This is where he comes from. I was there with Indraduna Swami and all the devotees, and we were doing kirtan, and Maharaj was sitting at the back. I think it was Badahari leading the kirtan, and Maharaj was sitting, and he caught my eye, and he indicated, and I looked where he was indicating, and he was sitting on just a pile, and Maharaj knew I was interested in getting a big Govardhan Shila. And so I grabbed one local brahmachari and took him to the pujari and explained my dilemma and asked, would this be possible to be given this Govardhan? He said, yes, you can do it. Go ahead. So immediately I put him in a bag and brought him. Permission of a local bridge posse. I didn't mention this yellow one here is from Shamakutira. I got him there, and he was confirmed by Giriraja Goswami, who we'll speak about a little bit later. And he's a long-time resident of Govardhan at Uddhavakund. He confirmed, yes, it's from Shamakutira, very special. So he gave him to me. At any rate, when we go that path to the left, that's one way to go. Or even if we go there, we have to come back. And then to the right, we go just around Punchari. Wow, we're only halfway there. We go just around Punchari, the tail of Govardhan. Now, back in the mid-'80s, this area, just right up against the base where it curves around, used to be called the Cowherd Boy Shortcut. There's a proper name. I think Sutalavan. It's known as the Cowherd Boy Shortcut because at one point it was literally a forested area, and you had to low growth and kind of get down there and crawl and squeeze down. And there was a little foot trail, like a peacock trail almost. You could go just at the base of the hill. And that was the closer path. But in recent years, they've cleared all of that forest out and put that nice brick pathway that we're all so familiar with now, which you can like or dislike. It doesn't matter. It's already there. But previously, this covered bush shortcut was there. And this would bring you out just at the area, at the end of Sutalavan, where the cave of Raghava Pandit is. Raghava Pandit lived at Govardhan for quite some number of years after the pastimes of Mahaprabhu in Puri. And when Narottam Das Thakur and Srinivasacharya came to Vrindavan and Jiva Goswami sent them to see Das Goswami at Radhakund, they also met Raghava Pandit, who came out of his cave and took them personally around Govardhan Hill. I mean, it's one thing we're sitting like this and talking about going on, but imagine one of the three most intimate disciples of Mahaprabhu personally takes you around Govardhan Hill. Pretty amazing experience. So they got this opportunity. That cave is still there, but here again, like many of the other caves, it's filled with some poisonous cobras that live there, and no one goes in that cave. If you get too close, you can hear them making their noises, so you kind of back up. You know, and it's a small little cave. You know, we think of a cave like, oh, you can go in and stand up and sit around and move around. No, this is a very small little, just a hole in the ground. But that's what it is. So we leave that area, and we enter the Kadambavan forest. One of the most beautiful sights you can ever get at Govardhan is to be on the Kadambavan forest side of Govardhan as the sun is rising over the hill. And of course, depending on what millennium, the hill was higher or lower. It was a different time of the day. But because of the current size of Govardhan, it's in the very early morning. And you can be going through Kadambavan forest, which at one time was filled with endless Kadamba trees. Now there's a few trees here and there and endless monkeys. But most of those monkeys are not troublesome. They're just very pleasant. But you go there and you can see just like where those trees are, like there just behind us, you can just see the sun coming up over in the morning, and it's one of the most beautiful sights you'll ever see in your entire life. The sun just rising over Govardhan Hill in the morning. And you know you're at a good spot because you've got not that much further to go. And it's such a wonderful experience. Now, at Kadambavan, which is where this other Govardhan Shila comes from, at Kadambavan, you can take advantage of a very special opportunity. It says that if you throw yourself into the dust, the Govardhan Renu, if you take in this hand one palm full of diamonds and rubies and emeralds, put some pearls in there, sprinkle in some gold, why not? And you take in this hand one palm full of the sand from Govardhan. You want to guess which has greater value? You can just throw this away and forget about it because the greatest value is there, Govardhan Renu. So at this place, at Kadambavan, it's said that if you roll in the dust of Govardhan at this place, all of the spiritual inhibitions that you have will melt away, and your advancement on the path of Prema Bhakti is guaranteed. So this is a place where you'll regularly see hundreds of devotees just frolicking and throwing in the air and on each other and rolling around, and just a wonderful, wonderful, playful place. Very, very nicely. This all takes place at Kadambavan. After we progress through and leave the forest of Kadambavan, we come to the town of Jatipur. Jatipur is an entire town that is established and focused solely on the worship of the Gopal deity. He resides on the top of the hill there. There's the old temple that was established by Madhavendra Puri, which is in ruins. And then there's the newer temple. And that can be seen. It's all painted white. You can see as you're going through Jatipur. And the local followers of the deity there, these are all followers of Balabhacharya Pustimar. They have no problems climbing up the hill and going to see this deity. So in one sense, I'm a little envious of them, but we don't do because Mahaprabhu has asked us not to. So they go, and you can see them traversing up and down from the town of Jatipur to go and take darshan and take their offerings to him. Also in this town is where the Mukara Govardhan is, the mouth of Govardhan, where there's constant, almost non-stop abhishek going on. They dress the Shilas there very nicely. If you're not very attentive, you can very easily get waylaid by these pandas there into the courtyard, and then it's finished. You'll be shelling out whatever rupees you have and spending quite some time there trying to figure out how to get back on the Purkar mark. At any rate, if you've done this a few times, you go through there with Dridhavrata, one pointed focus, just right past, and then you continue on. As you leave the town of Jatipur, just at the very end of Jatipur is a cute little village which is on the outer borders of Jatipur, where they have so many goats. And they have so many cute little goats that are just born, and even the bigger ones are very docile and very, very nice to stop and play with them a little bit. But then just after that, we come to another forested area, and this is the forest of Kumudhavan. Kumudhavan is a type of flowering tree that, again, was once very prominent there. This area is probably about the same length as Anayor on the other side at Anakukshetra. And it's a very, very thickly forested area to this day. It has not been deforested and pillaged like many of the other parts. And there has been an even more extensive effort by the government on top of what's there to reforest that area. This is a favored place of Sachinandana Swami for doing his bhajan during Kartik. The ashram he stays at is just across the street there. So this is a very, very wonderful place. And it's, again, ankle-deep sand for a couple of kilometers. And there are many, many, many numerous peacocks and cows and monkeys that all frolic in this area. And it's a very wonderful and quiet place. There's 4 paths going around Govardhan at this point. The one which we kind of tag named Peacock Alley, which is literally right there at the base of Govardhan, which everyone follows. Then there's this one, which is just a sandy path through Kumudhavan. And then a little bit further out is another path just on the edge of this forest, and then the main road. So these are the 4 paths going at this point in Govardhan all the way around. Kumudhavan is one of those places where you can just sit down under any tree there and very easily, very quietly, and very peacefully just chant Hare Krishna and just feel completely content. There's no disturbances, there's no difficulties there. It's a wonderful place. At any rate, we come up towards the end of Kumudhavan, and it blends back in just at the backside of Govardhan town, kind of like Damgati would be here. Just blends back into the main road, and then we re-enter the hustle and bustle of Govardhan town. And you have to probably about 20 minutes going through the town of Govardhan till you get to the other side of Govardhan. There's so many shops, and it's like a regular town. It's a wonderful place to walk through. It's a wonderful place to leave too, and then get back to the main periphery. Right on the back side of Govardhan town, where you rejoin the main Purkar Marg, there's a split off, and it's the back entrance to Manasi Ganga, and a very quick access to Chakaleshwar Mahadev. That's one where you can go in and then come back up. And then you join, and at this point, Govardhan Hill is that far row of trees, that far, if not further, away from the main path. And those are all just agricultural and cow fields between there. So you're quite some distance from Govardhan. There's no specific noted pilgrimage places there, and it's quite a long walk. Some people consider it the most difficult part of the Parikram, but it's also a very nice part because it's a sandy path. It's a very nice, clean dirt there. And you take this for some time. You can see Govardhan off to the right, a distance away. But after walking on this for some time, you come to the most beautiful, refreshing place of Uddhavakund. Uddhavakund is right on the back side, with the hill in the middle, of Kusum Sarovara. Matter of fact, inside the forest of Kusum Sarovara is an Uddhava temple, but then Uddhavakund, this is the place where Uddhavani was sent to Vrindavan by Krishna to give the message to the Brijbasis, particularly the gopis. And he saw the deep mood of their love. He decided he wanted to reside there as a creeper. And this creeper is called a Golma Lata. This was the residence that he wanted so that the Brijbasis, the Govardhan Basis, would walk over him. So this creeper is found there at Uddhavakund. And there's a very wonderful temple there, managed by one very, very nice Govardhan Basi named Giriraja Goswami. Giriraja Goswami is 70 years old, and for 40 of his years, he's resided at this temple at Govardhan, taking care of the deities there and taking care of Uddhavakund. He's very close friends with Indradumna Swami, and he's very kindly disposed towards many, many ISKCON devotees. When his father, who was a pundit there before him, wanted to have a son, he did 1,100 parikrams of Govardhan Hill. And then Giriraja Goswami was born. And once his father passed away at the age of 30, he moved there and he took over the seva. Very nice place to take a little break. Many devotees at this point avail themselves to the fresh juices that are made there, or have their little packed lunch with them and take a little break, a little nap. Many devotees also refresh themselves by taking a dip in Uddhavakund. It's a very, very nice kund. And you can see just over the rise of Govardhan, the spires on top of Kusum Sarovara. It's that close now in these times. There'll come a time in the future where it's just like, oh, there's Kusum Sarovara. But fortunately, we won't see that. We'll continue on from here. A little ways down on the right-hand side is a huge Lakshmi Narayan temple established by the Birlas, one of the wealthiest families in India. And then we come a little bit further, and the road splits again. The main traffic road goes off and circles around the perimeter of Radhakund town. But if you go to the left, it's a parikram walking path that some cars go on. And this takes you into the town of Govardhan. Now, right on that corner is a ladies' ashram, a widow's ashram, older women. And they're so satisfied when they see Western devotees doing parikram, especially if you happen to be Dandavat Parikram. They come out and they shower flowers on you and offer all kinds of praises and mantras and verses. It's very touching. You continue in this way for some distance. There's different temples off to the left and right. And then you come to the immediate path where you find the circumambulation path for Radhakund Shamakund. You come in. On the right-hand side is the temple of Bhakti Swarup Damodar Goswami. Very nice place there. Many devotees arrange to finish their pilgrimage and take prasad there, take a little rest, have Katha there. They have a big courtyard. But going to the left, you continue around, passing the Radha Govinda temple where the tongue of Govardhan is, coming back around to the different places. You continue on till you come around the Shamakund corner, and there's a place there where Jiva Goswami would regularly sit and chant. It's off the main path. You have to go in, and it's right on the banks of Shamakund. Very, very beautiful trees hang over there. It's another one of those quiet places you wouldn't know is there, and you wouldn't believe you're still at Radhakund with all the sound of everything. Once you go in there, it's so quiet and peaceful. You come back out, come to the area where the confluence is, the joining place of Radhakund and Shamakund. Not all devotees know that there's this bridge that goes across there, but there's actually pillars, archways underneath the water, and you can swim from one to the other if you're expert at swimming and don't mind running into the occasional huge turtle. And when they clean Radhakund and Shamakund, this whole structure becomes very visible. Some of you may have seen pictures of that. And then you come back around, finishing up right in front of Kundeshwar Mahadev. taking the blessings of Kundeshwar Mahadev for allowing us to complete our Govardhan Parakram, for blessing us to remove the obstacles that sometimes many people find difficult to completing this seva. And this is the important thing. This is the major principle in doing Govardhan Parakram. Many people do Govardhan Parakram, but many of the different personalities do it for some material purpose. You'll see a husband and wife doing because they want to have a child. You'll see students doing because they want to get good passing grades. You'll see whole families doing so that the family situation improves. And everyone that goes around Govardhan, Giriraj manifests behind them and follows. And he listens. What is it you desire? Oh, some sakama? Yes, you take it. He turns his face, back of the hand, yes, you take it. Go ahead, you can have it. Not so concerned, not very interested. All right, oh, you have material, yes, you take it. Go ahead, go away, go away. But for the devotee who is going around Govardhan praying, my dear Lord, please give me service to you. Please manifest love for Krishna in my heart. Please let me stay fixed in the path of devotional service. Giriraj listens. He follows for some time, he continues to listen. He follows for some time and ultimately goes, yes, let it be that you have devotion. So these are the two different moods we see in people doing Parakram of Govardhan, and two separate ways that Giriraj blesses. So we want to always aspire to not see this side of Giriraja. Yes. Just like when Brahma approached Krishna after his incident in stealing the cowherd boys, he came before Krishna. Krishna turned on him. No, I'm not listening. Talk to him. He wasn't hearing what he said. So we don't want that side of Giriraja. Yes. No, we want him listening. Oh, yes, you may have. So this should be our mood when we once again get the opportunity to go to Govardhan and circumambulate him and feel the cooling dust of Anakukshetra around our ankles and roll in the dust at Kadambavan and bathe ourselves in the refreshing waters of Radhakund Shamakund. So we'll finish there. I did bring one special thing. There's one place in the Shamkutira forest where there's an old Baba who does the service of regularly sweeping Govardhan. There's a series of Shilas there, large ones. And he goes every morning and sweeps this area and then does his seva. He gives one peanut. He brings, it's Yome Bhakta Prayachati, not the volume. One peanut, one offering of tulsi, some flower petal with sandal, like that, on these different Shilas. Then he takes the water and sweeps around. So one day I brought him a new broom. I said, can I have the old one? So you can each come forward and get the blessings of the broom that's actually swept the path of Govardhan.
I'll be first.
Thank you so much for letting me come and talk about Giriraja.
Thank you.
At one point it was filled with dust. There may still be some in there. Wash it out and everything. After being tapped on the heads of so many people.